I was 24 years old when I heard the words that would shatter me in front of everyone I thought was family. She probably came here hoping Grandpa would pay off her pathetic debt from beyond the grave. My cousin Victoria said it loud enough for the entire room to hear. Loud enough for the lawyer to pause mid-sentence. Loud enough for my Aunt Margaret to snicker behind her perfectly manicured hand. I stood frozen in the doorway of my grandfather's study, the same study where he used to help me with my college applications, where he'd listened to my dreams of becoming a journalist, where he told me that mistakes don't define you, how you rise from them does. The will reading. I'd driven 6 hours through a thunderstorm to be here. My car was held together by duct tape and prayers. My bank account had exactly $47. And yes, I owed $20,000 in credit card debt after my ex-boyfriend Max had stolen my identity and destroyed my credit before disappearing. But I came because I loved Grandpa Henry, not because I expected anything. The mahogany-paneled room smelled like his cologne and old books. 12 family members sat in leather chairs arranged in a semicircle. Victoria and her sister Charlotte occupied the front row, designer handbags at their feet. My Uncle Richard checked his Rolex repeatedly. Aunt Margaret whispered to Aunt Susan, both of them shooting glances at my thrift store dress. I was the only grandchild who visited Grandpa every week during his final year. The only one who read to him when his eyes got too weak, who held his hand through the chemo, who stayed overnight when the nurses said he didn't have much time. But apparently that didn't matter. I heard she got fired from that little newspaper job, Charlotte added, examining her nails. Couldn't even keep a position at a community paper. My face burned. I had been fired because I'd taken too many days off to care for Grandpa, because I'd chosen him over deadlines. Perhaps we should continue, Mr. Thornton, the estate lawyer, said quietly. He was a thin man in his 60s with kind eyes that had seen too many families implode over money. Oh, please continue, Victoria said, waving her hand dramatically. I'm sure we're all curious how Grandpa divided his estate. The vacation home in Cape Cod, the investment portfolio, the collection of rare first editions. She smiled at Charlotte. Mother said he promised her the lake house. He promised Father the vintage car collection, my cousin James added from the back. I wanted to disappear into the Persian rug beneath my feet. Actually, Mr. Thornton said, adjusting his reading glasses, before we begin with the specific bequests, there is a primary beneficiary named first in the will. The room went silent. A primary beneficiary? Uncle Richard sat forward. Father never mentioned the primary beneficiary, Mr. Thornton continued, his voice steady. Who will be receiving the bulk of the estate, including the main residence, the Cape Cod property, and 70% of the liquid assets is... My heart hammered. I thought of Grandpa's sprawling colonial house, the one where I'd spent every summer as a child. The one Victoria had already been measuring for renovations. Victoria's smile was triumphant. Charlotte sat up straighter. Aunt Margaret clasped her hands together in anticipation. Mr. Thornton looked directly at me. Miss Emma Rose Peterson, 24 years old, $20,000 in debt, and I had just inherited a fortune. The room erupted. Victoria jumped to her feet, her face contorting into something ugly. That's impossible. She's nobody. There must be a mistake, Uncle Richard's voice boomed. My father would never... But Mr. Thornton was already looking at me with something that might have been respect. And for the first time in months, I remembered how to breathe. Because Grandpa Henry had seen me. Really seen me, even when no one else did. The chaos in that room was like watching a perfectly staged family portrait burst into flames. Victoria's scream cut through every other voice. This is fraud. She manipulated him. He was senile. Henry was of completely sound mind when he drafted this will, Mr. Thornton said, his tone turning ice cold. I have medical documentation and psychiatric evaluations to prove it. This will was created 18 months ago and updated 6 months ago. Both times your grandfather was evaluated by independent physicians. My legs felt like water. I gripped the back of the nearest chair. 18 months ago. That was right after I'd moved back home to help care for him. Right after everyone else had been too busy to visit. How much? Aunt Margaret demanded. standing up so fast her chair scraped against the hardwood floor. How much is she getting? The estate is valued at approximately $12 million, Mr. Thornton said calmly. Miss Peterson will receive the primary residence valued at $2.8 million, the Cape Cod property valued at $1.6 million, and $8 million in liquid assets, stocks, and bonds. The number hit me like a physical blow. $12 million. I'd been eating ramen noodles for dinner and skipping meals to save money. I'd been terrified of checking my mailbox because of collection agency letters. I'd cried myself to sleep worrying about how I'd ever climb out of the hole Max had buried me in. The remaining assets, Mr. Thornton continued, will be divided among the other family members as specified in the document. Remaining assets? Charlotte's voice was shrill. What remaining assets? She's getting everything. You're getting the vintage car collection, James, Mr. Thornton read from the document. Valued at approximately $400,000. Victoria and Charlotte, you'll split the rare book collection, valued at $200,000. Richard, you're receiving the lake house, valued at $600,000. Margaret and Susan, you'll each receive $100,000 in cash. $100,000? Aunt Margaret looked like she might faint. My father was worth $12 million and I get $100,000? That's more than some people get from their parents, I said quietly. Every head swiveled toward me. It was the first time I'd spoken since entering the room. Victoria's eyes narrowed into slits. She moved toward me, and I could smell her expensive perfume mixed with rage. You did something to him? You poisoned his mind against his real family. His real family? The words came out stronger than I expected. I was there every single week for a year. Where were you? I have a career, Victoria snapped. Some of us have actual responsibilities. I had a career too, I said. I gave it up to take care of him. Oh, please. Charlotte joined her sister, and suddenly they were both standing over me like predators circling prey. You gave up a nothing job at a nothing newspaper. You saw an opportunity and you took it. You probably sweet-talked him, made him feel guilty. That's enough, Mr. Thornton said sharply. But Victoria wasn't done. She turned to the lawyer, her voice dripping with venom. There has to be a way to contest this. Mental incompetence, undue influence, something. You can certainly try, Mr. Thornton said. But I should warn you that your grandfather anticipated this reaction. He left very detailed instructions, and he recorded a video message explaining his reasoning. The room went silent again. A video? Uncle Richard asked. Yes. He requested that it be played only if the will was contested or if there were significant objections. Mr. Thornton looked around the room. Based on the current atmosphere, I believe now would be an appropriate time. He pulled out a laptop from his briefcase and set it on the desk. My heart was racing so fast I thought I might pass out. Grandpa had made a video? He'd never told me about that. Victoria and Charlotte slowly backed away, but their eyes stayed fixed on the screen. Everyone else shifted in their seats, suddenly looking uncomfortable. Mr. Thornton pressed play. And there he was, Grandpa Henry, sitting in his favorite armchair in this very study. He looked thin. This must have been filmed during his final months. But his eyes were sharp and clear, alert, unmistakably present. If you're watching this, his voice filled the room, and I felt tears instantly spring to my eyes. It means someone is questioning my judgment. He looked directly into the camera, and it felt like he was looking at every single person in that room who had doubted me. Let me make something very clear, Grandpa continued. I, Henry James Peterson, am of sound mind and body as I record this. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I know exactly why I'm doing it. Victoria's face had gone pale. Emma is receiving the bulk of my estate for one simple reason, Grandpa said, and his voice was strong, unwavering. She was the only one who loved me for me, not for what I could give her. Uncle Richard looked down at his expensive shoes. She sacrificed her career, her time, her youth to sit with an old man who was dying. She read to me. She laughed with me. She held my hand when I was scared. His voice cracked slightly. She stayed when everyone else found excuses to leave. I pressed my hand over my mouth, trying not to sob. So if you're angry, Grandpa said, leaning forward slightly, his expression hardening, be angry at yourselves for not showing up when it mattered. The video ended. The silence was deafening. Then Victoria's phone buzzed, shattering the moment. She glanced at it, and her expression changed from shock to something calculating. Well, she said slowly, a cruel smile spreading across her face. Before everyone starts celebrating Emma's windfall, there's something she should probably know. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? I asked. Victoria held up her phone, showing the screen to the room. Max is back in town, she said sweetly. And according to his Instagram post from 20 minutes ago, he's filing a lawsuit against you. Something about emotional distress and defamation? The room started spinning. Max, the man who'd ruined my credit, stolen my identity, and disappeared for 2 years. He'd somehow found out about the inheritance. And now he was coming for it. The name Max Sutherland had haunted me for 2 years, and now it was back, spoken aloud in a room full of vultures who suddenly looked very interested. Who's Max? Aunt Margaret asked, leaning forward like she'd just caught the scent of blood. Victoria's smile widened. She was enjoying this. Emma's ex-boyfriend. The one she claims stole her identity and ruined her credit. Though I've always wondered if that story was entirely true. It is true, I said, my voice shaking. He opened credit cards in my name, maxed them out, and disappeared. I filed a police report. I have documentation. Documentation, Charlotte repeated mockingly. How convenient. And now that you're suddenly rich, he's back with a lawsuit, almost like there's more to the story than you've told us. My hands were trembling. I shoved them into my pockets. What kind of lawsuit? Uncle Richard asked. He'd moved closer, suddenly very interested in my problems now that they might affect the estate. Victoria scrolled through her phone. According to this post, he's claiming Emma destroyed his reputation by filing false police reports and spreading lies about him to his employer. He's suing for defamation and emotional distress. She looked up at me. He's asking for $2 million. The number hit me like a punch to the gut. $2 million. A fraction of what I'd just inherited, but enough to drag me into court. Enough to make me look like exactly what they all thought I was. A gold digger, a liar, someone who'd manipulated her way into Grandpa's will. This is perfect, Victoria said, and she wasn't even trying to hide her satisfaction anymore. This proves she's not the innocent victim she pretends to be. If her own ex-boyfriend is suing her, ex-boyfriend who committed identity theft, I interrupted, finding my voice. Who the police have been looking for. Who's only surfacing now because he saw the inheritance in the news somehow. Or, Charlotte suggested, tilting her head, maybe he's surfacing because he finally feels safe to tell his side of the story. Maybe you did lie about him. Maybe you needed a scapegoat for your own bad financial decisions. I wanted to scream that they didn't know anything about what I'd been through, about the nights I'd spent on the phone with credit bureaus, about the shame of being rejected for apartments because my credit score was destroyed. But I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up. This could affect the estate, Uncle Richard said thoughtfully. If she's being sued, if there's a judgment against her, creditors could come after Henry's assets. The estate is protected under probate law, Mr. Thornton interjected firmly. Miss Peterson's personal debts or lawsuits cannot touch the inherited assets until they've been properly transferred and the estate is closed. But they could after that, Aunt Margaret said quickly. Once the money is hers, this Max person could take it all in court. They were circling again. Sensing weakness, smelling opportunity, Victoria pulled out her phone and started typing. I'm texting my lawyer right now. We need to file an emergency motion to freeze the estate distribution until this lawsuit is resolved. You can't do that, I said, but my voice sounded small. We can try, Victoria shot back. If there's even a chance that Grandpa's money will end up in the hands of some con artist ex-boyfriend, we have a responsibility to protect the estate. Protect the estate? The words burst out of me. You didn't care about protecting Grandpa when he was alive. You didn't visit him, You didn't call him? You didn't even send him a card on his birthday. Don't you dare. Victoria's voice dropped to something dangerous. Don't you dare lecture us about family. You wormed your way into his life when he was vulnerable. I loved him. You loved his money. The words hung in the air between us like a slap. Mr. Thornton cleared his throat. Perhaps we should take a break. Emotions are running high, and there are still several items to discuss. I'm not taking a break, Victoria said. I want to know exactly what legal protections we have if Emma's lawsuit exposes this estate to liability. There are no protections needed, Mr. Thornton said, his patience clearly wearing thin. Because Miss Peterson's personal legal issues are separate from the estate distribution. But if she's proven to be a liar in court, Charlotte pressed, doesn't that give us grounds to contest the will based on character? No, Mr. Thornton said flatly. It does not. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with shaking hands. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press accept. Emma Peterson? A male voice I didn't recognize. Yes? This is Detective Marcus Chen with the Boston Police Department Fraud Division. I've been trying to reach you for the past 3 months regarding the Maxwell Sutherland identity theft case. My heart stopped. You have? Yes, I've left several messages on your old phone number. But I have good news. We've located Mr. Sutherland, and we have enough evidence to file criminal charges. I need you to come in and make a formal statement. The room had gone silent. Everyone was watching me. When did you find him? I asked. We actually picked him up this morning, Detective Chen said. He made the mistake of posting his location on social media. He's currently being held pending arraignment. Victoria's face went white. Wait, I said slowly. He's in custody right now? Yes, ma'am. Has been since 9 a.m. Why? I looked at Victoria, at her phone still open to Max's Instagram post. What time was that post made? Victoria's hand tightened around her phone. It said 20 minutes ago. Detective Chen, I said clearly, making sure everyone could hear. If Max has been in custody since 9 this morning, could he have posted anything on social media in the last hour? Absolutely not. He's been in an interrogation room. No phone access. I turned to Victoria. My fear was turning into something else. Something sharper. Show me that post, I said. I don't have to show you. Show me the post. Mr. Thornton stood up. Miss Victoria, if you have relevant information about a legal matter affecting this estate, you need to present it now. Victoria's jaw clenched. Slowly, she turned her phone screen toward us. The Instagram post was there. It showed Max in what looked like a coffee shop, holding a paper with text about the lawsuit. But the photo quality was off. The lighting was wrong. And the paper looked photoshopped. This is fake, I breathed. You made this up. I did not. Victoria's voice went shrill. It was on his account. Show me the account name, Mr. Thornton demanded. Victoria hesitated too long. Because there was no post. There was no lawsuit. She'd fabricated the entire thing to discredit me in front of the family. And now everyone in that room knew it. I think, Mr. Thornton said coldly, we need to discuss the clause in Mr. Peterson's will regarding any family member who attempts to defame or interfere with the primary beneficiary. Victoria's face went from white to gray. What clause? She whispered. Mr. Thornton smiled, but it wasn't friendly. The one that removes their inheritance entirely. I watched the color drain completely from Victoria's face as Mr. Thornton's words settled over the room like a death sentence. There's no such clause, Victoria stammered, but her voice had lost all its venom. Now she just sounded desperate. Mr. Thornton flipped through the thick will document with the calm precision of a surgeon. Page 17, Section 4, subsection C. Would you like me to read it aloud? Nobody spoke. He read anyway. Should any beneficiary attempt to defame, slander, or deliberately interfere with the primary beneficiary's inheritance through false claims, fabricated evidence, or malicious intent, said, beneficiary shall forfeit their entire inheritance, which will instead be donated to the Hartford Children's Hospital in their name. Charlotte grabbed her sister's arm. Victoria, what did you do? I didn't fabricate anything. Victoria's voice was rising again, but now it was panic, not anger. I saw the post, Show us your phone, Uncle Richard demanded. Right now. Victoria clutched her phone to her chest like it was a lifeline. This is insane. You're all turning on me because of her? She pointed at me. She's the one who manipulated Grandpa. Your grandfather, Mr. Thornton said, his voice cutting through her protests like a knife, anticipated this exact behavior. In fact, he wrote a letter specifically addressing it. Would you like me to read that as well? Victoria's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. I'll take that as a yes, Mr. Thornton said. He pulled out a sealed envelope from his briefcase. The handwriting on the front was unmistakably Grandpa's. My chest tightened. How many letters had he written? How much had he known about what would happen in this room? Mr. Thornton opened the envelope and began to read. To whomever tries to hurt Emma after I'm gone, and I know someone will, you should understand something. I've watched this family for 78 years. I've seen the greed, the jealousy, the casual cruelty you inflict on each other when you think no one's paying attention. Aunt Margaret shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Emma is different, Mr. Thornton continued. She came to my house every week not because she wanted something, but because she cared. She sat with me through chemo. She held a bucket when I was sick. She read to me when I couldn't sleep. She cried with me when I was scared of dying. My vision blurred with tears. So if you're reading this letter, it means someone, probably Victoria if I'm being honest, has tried to destroy her credibility to get at her inheritance. And if that's the case, then I want you to enforce the forfeiture clause immediately and without mercy. Victoria made a choking sound. Emma doesn't need to defend herself. Grandpa's words continued through Mr. Thornton's steady voice. I'm defending her. From beyond the grave if I have to, because that's what people who love each other do. The letter ended. The silence was absolute. Then Aunt Margaret spoke, her voice quiet but sharp. Victoria, if you've cost yourself that book collection over a fake Instagram post, I swear to God, it wasn't fake, Victoria shrieked. I saw it on his account. Then show us, I said. My voice was calm now, steady, because I knew the truth, and the truth was making me stronger with every passing second. Open Instagram right now and show us Max's account. Victoria's hands were shaking as she unlocked her phone. She opened Instagram and typed in Max's username. The account loaded. The most recent post was from 3 months ago. A photo of a beach in Thailand with the caption, New Beginnings. There was no post about a lawsuit. No photo in a coffee shop. Nothing from today. I don't understand, Victoria whispered. It was here. I saw it. Or, Charlotte said slowly, realization dawning on her face. You saw it on a fake account. Or you created a screenshot yourself. I didn't create anything, Victoria screamed. But even Charlotte was backing away from her now. Mr. Thornton closed his laptop. Miss Victoria Peterson, based on what I've witnessed here today, I'm invoking the forfeiture clause. Your inheritance of the rare book collection, valued at $100,000, is hereby revoked. The funds will be donated to Hartford Children's Hospital as specified in the will. No, Victoria breathed. No, you can't. Additionally, Mr. Thornton continued, I'll be documenting this incident in my report to the probate court. If you choose to contest the will, this evidence of attempted defamation will be presented to the judge. Victoria turned to me, and for the first time since I'd entered this room, she looked small, defeated. Emma, please. I made a mistake. I was upset. I wasn't thinking clearly. You called me a gold digger in front of everyone, I said quietly. You said I manipulated a dying man. You tried to convince everyone I was a liar and a fraud. You fabricated evidence to destroy my credibility. I'm sorry, Victoria whispered. I'm so sorry. Please don't let them take it away. Charlotte grabbed her purse and stood up. I'm leaving. Victoria, you're on your own. She looked at me, and there was something almost like respect in her eyes. Congratulations, Emma. Apparently, Grandpa knew exactly what he was doing. She walked out. One by one, the other family members began to gather their things. Uncle Richard paused by the door, looking back at me. For what it's worth, Emma, I believe you were good to him. I should have visited more. Then he was gone too. Soon it was just me, Mr. Thornton, Victoria, and Aunt Margaret, who seemed frozen in her chair. Margaret, Mr. Thornton said gently, you should go home. We can schedule a separate meeting to discuss your portion of the estate. Aunt Margaret looked at her daughter with something like disgust, then at me with something like fear. This family is cursed, she muttered. Then she too was gone. Victoria stood in the middle of the room, tears streaming down her face. What am I supposed to do now? Learn from it, I said. Learn that actions have consequences. She looked at me like she wanted to say something else, but then she just grabbed her designer handbag and fled. The door closed behind her, and then it was just me and Mr. Thornton in Grandpa's study. The silence was different now. Peaceful, like a storm had passed. That was quite something, Mr. Thornton said, allowing himself a small smile. In 40 years of estate law, I've never seen anything quite like that. I sank into one of the leather chairs, my legs finally giving out. Is it really over? The will reading? Yes, the estate distribution. That will take a few months. He began packing up his materials. But Miss Peterson, there's one more thing your grandfather left for you. Something he wanted you to have immediately, not after probate. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small wooden box. I recognized it instantly. It was the box Grandpa kept on his desk. The one he never let anyone touch. He left specific instructions, Mr. Thornton said, handing it to me. You're to open this alone in this study after everyone else has left? My hands trembled as I took the box. I'll show myself out, Mr. Thornton said kindly. Congratulations, Miss Peterson. Your grandfather would be very proud of how you handled yourself today. Then I was alone, just me and the box and the ghost of my grandfather in every corner of this room. I opened it slowly. Inside was a letter in Grandpa's handwriting, and beneath it, something that made my heart stop. A flash drive, and a note that read, Emma, if you're reading this, then you've survived the vultures. Now it's time to learn the whole truth about why I really left you everything. Watch the video on this drive. Trust no one until you do. Grandpa Henry. The whole truth? What did that mean? I plugged the flash drive into Mr. Thornton's forgotten laptop with shaking hands. The video file loaded, and what I saw in the first 10 seconds made me realize that the will reading had been just the beginning. This inheritance came with a secret, and that secret was going to change everything. The video opened on Grandpa Henry sitting at this very desk, but he looked different, stronger. This was filmed at least 2 years ago, maybe more. Emma, he said, and his voice was clear, firm. If you're watching this, it means you've inherited everything, and the family has shown their true colors. I'm sorry you had to see that, sweetheart. But it was necessary. I leaned closer to the screen, my heart pounding. What I'm about to tell you will be difficult to hear, Grandpa continued. But you deserve to know the truth about why I chose you. It's not just because you were kind to me. It's because you're the only one I can trust with what I'm about to reveal. He took a deep breath. 25 years ago, I made a terrible mistake. I was involved in a business deal that hurt people. A lot of people. I convinced myself it was legal, that I was just being smart with investments. But the truth is, I knew what I was doing was wrong, and I did it anyway. My stomach tightened. The Harrington Development Project, Grandpa said. Does that name mean anything to you? It didn't. I shook my head at the screen even though he couldn't see me. It was a real estate development in South Boston. Low-income housing that was supposed to be renovated and preserved. I was on the investment board. We told the residents we'd improve their homes, that they could stay. But we lied. His face hardened with shame. We forced them out. We demolished the buildings. We built luxury condos and made millions. 43 families lost their homes. Some of them ended up on the streets. 3 of them, his voice cracked. 3 of them died that winter because they had nowhere to go. I pressed my hand over my mouth. I've lived with that guilt every day since, Grandpa said. I tried to make amends quietly. Anonymous donations to homeless shelters, funding for affordable housing projects. But it was never enough. Nothing could bring those people back or undo what we did. He leaned forward. 6 months ago, I received a letter from someone who knows what I did. Someone who has evidence. Documents with my signature. Recordings of board meetings where we discuss the evictions. This person wants justice, Emma, and they want money. Blackmail. My grandfather was being blackmailed. I've been paying them, Grandpa continued. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. They wanted $5 million to keep quiet. I refused. I told them if they wanted to expose me, they could. I was dying anyway. What did I care about my reputation? He smiled sadly. But then I thought about you, about the inheritance, about what would happen if this person went public after I died. The scandal would be national news. The estate would be tied up in lawsuits for years. Victim families would come forward. You'd lose everything before you ever got a chance to have it. My blood ran cold. So I made a deal with the blackmailer, Grandpa said. I agreed to pay the $5 million, but not from my estate, from a separate account that I've been hiding from everyone, including my lawyers. It's offshore, untraceable, and the payment is scheduled to transfer automatically 1 week after my death. 1 week after his death. I checked the date on my phone. The funeral had been 5 days ago. The transfer was happening in 2 days. Here's where you come in, Emma, Grandpa said, and his expression became intense. I need you to stop that payment. What? I said out loud to the empty room. The account information is in a safety deposit box at First National Bank. Box number 847. The key is in this wooden box, hidden in a false bottom. He paused. You need to get to that bank, access that account, and cancel the automatic transfer before it goes through. But why? I asked the screen. If you agreed to pay them, because the blackmailer is someone in the family, Grandpa said, and my world tilted. In the family. I don't know who, he continued. The letters were anonymous. The phone calls used voice distortion. But certain things they knew, details about family gatherings, private conversations, only someone close could have known them. I thought about everyone who'd been in this room today. Victoria, Charlotte, Uncle Richard, Aunt Margaret. One of them was a blackmailer. If you stop the payment, they'll have no choice but to reveal themselves, Grandpa said. They'll come after you directly. And when they do, you'll know who's been betraying this family. He leaned back in his chair. I know I'm asking a lot. I know this isn't fair. But Emma, you're the only one strong enough to handle this. You're the only one I trust to do what's right, even when it's hard. Tears streamed down my face. The evidence of my crimes is real, Grandpa said quietly. If it goes public, my name will be destroyed. The family name will be destroyed. But more importantly, you'll lose everything I've left you. The estate will be picked apart by lawyers and victims' families who deserve compensation. He looked directly into the camera, directly at me. So you have a choice to make, sweetheart. You can let the payment go through, keep the blackmailer quiet, protect the inheritance, and live with the knowledge that someone in your family is getting away with extortion. Or you can stop the payment, force them into the open, and deal with whatever consequences come. The video was ending. Whatever you choose, Grandpa said softly. I love you. I'm sorry I left you with this burden. But I believe in you. You're stronger than you know. The screen went black. I sat there staring at nothing, my mind racing. 2 days. I had 2 days to decide. And then my phone rang. Unknown number again, I answered without thinking. Emma Peterson? A woman's voice, distorted, electronic. My entire body went cold. Who is this? You're watching the video right now, aren't you? The voice said. I can see the light from the study window, sitting at his desk, just like he knew you would be. I spun around, looking at the windows. The curtains were open. Anyone outside could see in. Who are you? I demanded. Someone who knows what Henry did, the voice said. Someone who deserves to be compensated for his crimes. You're blackmailing a dead man, I said. That's sick. What's sick is 43 families losing their homes, the voice shot back. What's sick is 3 people dying in the cold. What's sick is Henry Peterson getting to die peacefully in his bed surrounded by people who thought he was a good man. I had no response to that. The payment goes through in 2 days, the voice continued. Don't try to stop it. Don't go to that bank. Don't access that account. If you do, I'll release everything. Every document. Every recording. Your grandfather's name will become synonymous with greed and cruelty. And that inheritance you just got? It'll disappear so fast you'll think it was a dream. Then why are you calling me? I asked. If the payment's automatic, because I know Henry, the voice interrupted. He wouldn't just leave you the inheritance. He'd leave you a way to fight back. So I'm warning you, don't fight. Take your millions and walk away. Let justice be served. Justice? I laughed bitterly. You mean $5 million in your pocket? I mean compensation for families whose lives were destroyed. Then why don't you give them the money? I challenged. If this is really about justice. The line went dead. I sat there, phone in hand, heart hammering. Someone in my family had just threatened me. Someone who'd been watching me through the window. Someone who knew exactly what Grandpa had planned. I grabbed the wooden box and examined the bottom. Sure enough, there was a false compartment. Inside was a small brass key and another note. Don't go alone. Grandpa, don't go alone. But who could I trust? Everyone at that will reading was a suspect. Everyone except... My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. If you need help, call this number. A friend of your grandfather's. He'll protect you. Detective Marcus Chen. Detective Chen. The one who'd called about Max. I stared at the number. Then at the key in my hand. 2 days until the payment. 2 days to decide who I could trust. 2 days until everything either fell apart or finally made sense. I took a deep breath and dialed the number. A male voice answered on the first ring. Miss Peterson, I've been waiting for your call. The man on the phone had a voice like gravel, rough, weathered, but somehow comforting. My name is Robert Hayes, he said. I was your grandfather's attorney for 30 years before Thornton took over. Henry asked me to watch over you if things got complicated. Complicated is an understatement, I said, my voice shaking. Someone just called me. They know I watched the video. They were watching me through the window. Get away from the windows, now. I scrambled out of the chair and moved to the corner of the study, my back against the bookshelf. Are you somewhere safe? Hayes asked. I think so. Good. Listen carefully, Emma. Your grandfather suspected someone in the family discovered his secret about 6 months ago. That's when the blackmail started. He hired me to investigate quietly. Did you find out who it is? No, but I narrowed it down to 3 people. Victoria, Richard, and Margaret. The 3 most vocal people at the will reading. How did you narrow it down? I asked. Access to information, Hayes explained. The blackmailer knew details about the Harrington project that were never public. Only 5 people knew the full story. Your grandfather, 2 business partners who are both dead, and someone who accessed Henry's private files. His files were here? In this house? In his home office safe? Someone got the combination. The safe was opened 3 times in the past 6 months when Henry was at medical appointments. Each time, one of those 3 people was alone in the house. My mind raced. But why would they risk it? They were getting inheritances anyway. Victoria and Charlotte were getting $100,000 each from the book collection. That's nothing compared to $5 million tax-free dollars. Richard was getting the lake house, but it has a massive mortgage your grandfather never told anyone about. And Margaret... Hayes paused. Margaret's husband has gambling debts. Serious ones. The kind that get people hurt. Everyone had a motive. What do I do? I asked. You go to that bank tomorrow morning, Hayes said firmly. You access that account and you stop the payment. It's the only way to force them into the open. But they threatened to release everything. They're bluffing, Hayes interrupted. If they release those documents, they lose their leverage. The money stops. The blackmail ends. They won't do it unless they're desperate. And if I'm wrong, if they do release it? Hayes was quiet for a moment. Then you'll lose the inheritance. The estate will be tied up in lawsuits for years. Your grandfather's name will be destroyed. But Emma, His voice softened. Henry knew that might happen. He was prepared for it. He said if it came down to it, you'd make the right choice. What's the right choice? I whispered. That's something only you can decide. I closed my eyes. 2 days, one decision. Everything on the line. There's something else, Hayes said. Your grandfather left instructions for me to give you if you decided to go to the bank. He said you'd need proof. Evidence that the blackmailer is lying about using the money for victim compensation. What kind of evidence? A second account. Hidden even deeper than the first one. It contains records of every payment the blackmailer has received, and proof of where that money actually went. Not to victims' families, to personal accounts, luxury purchases, gambling debts. My breath caught. He was tracking them? Henry was a lot of things, but he wasn't stupid. He knew whoever was blackmailing him was lying about their motives, so he made sure every transaction was documented. Where's this second account? Same bank. Same safety deposit box. There's a second key taped under the false bottom. I grabbed the wooden box and felt underneath. Sure enough, there was another key. I'll meet you at the bank tomorrow, Hayes said. 9 a.m. Don't tell anyone you're going. Don't trust anyone from the family. Not even the ones who seem innocent. Okay, I said, though my voice sounded far away. And Emma? Pack a bag tonight. After we access those accounts, you might need to disappear for a few days until this settles. Disappear? Whoever's blackmailing you won't take kindly to losing $5 million. They might do something desperate. The line went dead. I stood there in the corner of Grandpa's study, clutching a wooden box with 2 keys, wondering how my life had gone from struggling to pay rent to running from a blackmailer in the span of 6 hours. My phone buzzed again. A text from Victoria. We need to talk. It's important. Can I come by the house? I stared at the message. Victoria, who'd just lost her inheritance because she tried to destroy me. Who had motive? Who had access to Grandpa's safe? Was she the blackmailer? Or was this a trap? Before I could respond, another text came through. From Uncle Richard. Emma, I apologize for today. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow morning? I have information about your grandfather you need to hear. Information I needed to hear. Tomorrow morning. The same time I was supposed to be at the bank. My hands were shaking. A third text. This one from Aunt Margaret. Your grandfather owed my husband money. We need to discuss repayment terms before the estate closes. Call me. 3 texts. 3 suspects. All reaching out within minutes of each other. Someone was panicking. I looked at the window. The curtains were still open. Was someone out there watching? Waiting to see what I'd do? I grabbed my jacket and the wooden box. I needed to get out of this house. I needed to think. As I reached the front door, I heard footsteps on the porch. Heavy footsteps. Someone was outside. I froze, my hand on the doorknob. A knock, sharp, demanding. Emma? A male voice. Emma, I know you're in there. Open the door. I didn't recognize the voice. My name is James Harrington, the voice said. My mother lost her home in the Harrington Development Project 25 years ago. Your grandfather destroyed my family, and now we need to talk about what you're going to do to make this right. My heart slammed against my ribcage as I stared at the door. James Harrington, a victim's son, standing on my grandfather's porch. I'm not here to hurt you, he said through the door. I just want to talk, please. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but something in his voice, exhaustion maybe or desperation, made me hesitate. How did you find me? I called out. I've been watching this house for 6 months, he said, waiting for Henry Peterson to die so I could finally confront him. But he died before I got the chance, so now I'm confronting you. I pressed my back against the door. I didn't know what he did. I just found out an hour ago. I know. I watched you through the window. I saw you watching the video. I saw your face when you realized what kind of man your grandfather really was. The person watching through the window. It wasn't the blackmailer. It was a victim. What do you want from me? I asked. Justice, he said simply. My mother died homeless, Miss Peterson. She froze to death under a bridge 3 months after she lost her apartment. I was 14 years old. I found her body. My throat closed up. 42 other families lost everything, James continued. Some recovered. Some didn't. My family didn't. My little sister ended up in foster care. I aged out of the system at 18 with nothing. No home, no family, no future. I'm so sorry, I whispered. Sorry doesn't pay for therapy. Sorry doesn't bring my mother back. Sorry doesn't give me the childhood your grandfather stole from me. He was right. What could I possibly say that would matter? But I'm not here for an apology, James said. I'm here because someone's been calling me. Someone who claims they're getting $5 million from your grandfather's estate as compensation for the victims. They said they'd give each family their share. The blackmailer. Did they tell you their name? I asked. No, they used a voice distorter. But they knew things. Details about the project, about the evictions, about what happened to my mother. They said the payment was coming in 2 days. I closed my eyes. The blackmailer was using victims as cover, making them think justice was finally coming. James, I said carefully, I don't think that person is planning to give you anything. Silence on the other side of the door. What do you mean? I think someone in my family is using what my grandfather did to extort money from his estate. I think they're lying to you. How do you know? Because my grandfather left me evidence. Documentation of where the blackmail money was really going. And it wasn't to victim families. I heard James take a sharp breath. Show me. I can't, not yet. I have to go to the bank tomorrow and access the account first. Then I'm coming with you. No. Miss Peterson, James said, and his voice was steel now. 43 families have been waiting 25 years for justice. If someone's using our suffering to steal money, I have a right to know. And I have a right to stop them. He was right. 9 a.m., I said. First National Bank downtown. Meet me outside. I'll be there. His footsteps retreated down the porch steps. I waited until I heard a car engine start and fade into the distance before I opened the door. The street was empty, dark. The neighbors' houses were all lit up with warm yellow light, families having dinner, watching TV, living normal lives. I wasn't sure I'd ever have a normal life again. I grabbed my keys in the wooden box and walked to my beat-up car. I needed to find somewhere safe to spend the night. Somewhere no one would think to look for me. As I pulled out of the driveway, my phone rang. Robert Hayes. Don't go home, he said immediately. I just got a call from a contact at the police department. Someone reported a break-in at your apartment 20 minutes ago. What? Nothing was taken, but everything was searched. Drawers emptied, mattress sliced open, closets torn apart. Whoever did it was looking for something. The keys. They were looking for the safety deposit box keys. They know, I breathed. They know Grandpa left me access to the accounts. Which means they're desperate, Hayes said. Which means you need to be very careful. Where are you now? Leaving Grandpa's house. Good. Go to the Marriott on 5th Street. I've booked you a room under a false name. Sarah Collins, don't use your credit card. I left cash at the front desk. How did you? Your grandfather prepared for this scenario, Hayes said. He knew they'd come after you. He set up contingencies. Grandpa had planned for war, and I was the soldier he'd left behind to fight it. One more thing, Hayes said. I did some digging on James Harrington. His story checks out. His mother really did die after the evictions. He's been working 3 jobs trying to support his sister and put himself through community college. He's not your enemy. I know, I said. He's coming to the bank with us tomorrow. Hayes was quiet for a moment. That's either very smart or very dangerous. Maybe both. Get some sleep, Emma. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. I drove to the Marriott in a daze. Checked in under the fake name. Took the elevator to the 8th floor. Locked myself in a room that smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation. I set the wooden box on the bed and stared at it. 2 keys, 2 accounts. One decision that would determine everything. My phone buzzed with a text. Victoria, please call me. I made a mistake today, but I can explain. I know things about Grandpa you don't know. Things that will change everything. Another text. Uncle Richard. The family is meeting tomorrow at 8 a.m. at Margaret's house. You need to be there. It's about the estate. It's urgent. 8 a.m., 1 hour before the bank opened. They were trying to delay me, or distract me, or trap me. A third text. This one from Detective Chen. Max Sutherland made bail. He's out. Be careful. My blood ran cold. Max was out. The man who'd destroyed my credit and disappeared for 2 years was back on the streets. And now he knew I'd inherited $12 million. I looked at the door, checked the lock, checked it again. Then I pulled out Grandpa's letter and read it one more time. You're stronger than you know. I wanted to believe him. But sitting alone in a hotel room, hunted by a blackmailer and a con artist ex-boyfriend, facing a decision that could destroy everything, I'd never felt weaker in my entire life. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me press accept. Hello? Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice I recognized. A voice that made my blood turn to ice. Hey, Emma, it's Max. We need to talk about that inheritance. Max's voice slithered through the phone like poison. $12 million, he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. That's a lot of money for someone who couldn't afford to pay her rent 2 years ago. How did you get this number? I demanded. I have my ways. You'd be surprised what people will tell you for the right price. He paused. Or what they'll do when they're desperate. My mind raced. Someone had given him my number. Someone who knew I'd be at this hotel. What do you want, Max? What I've always wanted. What's mine? You stole from me, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You destroyed my credit. You ruined my life. The police are looking for you. The police released me, Max said calmly. Insufficient evidence. Turns out, it's really hard to prove identity theft when the person you're accusing has receipts showing you gave them permission to use your cards. I never gave you permission. That's not what the documents say. Documents with your signature, Emma. Documents I've kept very safe for exactly this moment. Forged documents. He'd forged my signature. You're lying, I said, am I? Want to test that theory in court? Because I've got a lawyer who's very interested in arguing that you willingly gave me access to your accounts, and then when the relationship ended badly, you falsely accused me of theft to avoid responsibility for your own debt. My hands were shaking. No one would believe that. Maybe not. But it would tie up your inheritance in litigation for years. And legal fees? Those add up fast, especially when you're fighting both a defamation lawsuit and identity theft counterclaims. He let that sink in. Or we could settle this quietly. You want money. I want what I'm owed. You cost me 2 years of my life hiding overseas. You cost me job opportunities, relationships, stability. I think $2 million is fair compensation. $2 million. The same amount the fake lawsuit Victoria mentioned had demanded. Did Victoria put you up to this? I asked suddenly. Max laughed. Victoria, your uptight cousin, please. I don't need help from desperate trust fund babies. His voice turned cold. This is between you and me, Emma. Pay me what I'm owed, or I'll make sure you spend every penny of that inheritance defending yourself in court. I'm not giving you anything, I said. Then you're making a mistake. A very expensive mistake, he paused. I know where you are, by the way. The Marriott on 5th Street, room 847. Nice choice. Good security. Though security can't stop someone who's determined. My blood turned to ice. How did he know my room number? If you come near me, I'll call the police, I said. And tell them what? That your ex-boyfriend called you? That's not a crime, Emma. But you know what is? Filing false police reports, which is exactly what I'll accuse you of if you push me. The line went dead. I stood frozen in the middle of the hotel room, phone clutched in my shaking hand. He knew where I was. He knew my room number. Someone had told him. I grabbed the wooden box in my jacket. I had to get out of this room. Had to get somewhere safer. As I reached for the door handle, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate, stopping right outside my door. A shadow appeared under the door frame. Someone was standing there. I held my breath. A piece of paper slid under the door. Then the footsteps walked away. I waited until I couldn't hear them anymore before I picked up the paper. It was a printout of a bank statement, an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, and the account holder's name made my heart stop. Robert Hayes, the lawyer Grandpa had supposedly trusted, the man who was supposed to help me tomorrow. The account showed deposits totaling $4 million over the past 6 months, all from my grandfather's hidden account. Hayes wasn't helping me. He was the blackmailer. My phone rang again. Hayes's number. I answered, my voice barely a whisper. I know it's you. Silence. Then a sigh. I was hoping you wouldn't find out until after tomorrow, Hayes said. His voice was different now. No more pretend warmth. Just cold calculation. Who told you? Does it matter? Actually, yes. Because I need to know who else knows. And I need to know if I can still trust you to do the right thing. The right thing? I laughed bitterly. You mean let you steal $5 million from my grandfather's estate? I prefer to think of it as collecting what I'm owed, Hayes said. I worked for your grandfather for 30 years. I covered up his crimes. I made his illegal deals look legitimate. I destroyed evidence that could have sent him to prison. And when I asked for a fair share of his estate, he refused me. So you blackmailed him. I extracted fair compensation for services rendered, Hayes corrected. Your grandfather built his fortune on the backs of people he destroyed. The Harrington Project was just one of many. I have evidence of a dozen other schemes. Tax evasion, fraud, bribery. Henry Peterson was not a good man, Emma. Then why protect him? Why not just expose everything? Because exposure helps no one, Hayes said. It destroys the estate, which means you lose your inheritance. It destroys the family name. It invites lawsuits and criminal investigations that hurt everyone except the lawyers who get rich off the chaos. My way, everyone wins. You keep your inheritance. I get compensated. The victims never know the truth. Except you're not compensating victims, I said. That was a lie. A necessary lie. James Harrington and the others needed hope. I gave them that. If they never actually receive money, they'll blame Henry's estate management, not me. You're using their pain to justify theft. I'm using their pain to get what I deserve, Hayes snapped. Don't lecture me about morality, Emma. You inherited $12 million from a man who ruined lives. That makes you just as complicit. The words hit me like a slap. Was he right? Did accepting the inheritance make me complicit in Grandpa's crimes? Here's what's going to happen, Hayes continued. Tomorrow morning you're going to that bank. You're going to access the account, and you're going to let the automatic transfer go through. If you do that, I'll disappear. You'll never hear from me again. The evidence of your grandfather's crimes stays buried. You keep your inheritance. Everyone moves on. And if I don't, then I release everything. Every document. Every recording. Every crime Henry Peterson ever committed. Your inheritance gets frozen. The IRS gets involved. The FBI gets involved. You spend the next decade in court defending a dead man's reputation while lawyers bleed the estate dry. And when it's all over, you'll have nothing. I closed my eyes. You're giving me no choice. I'm giving you the only rational choice, Hayes said. Let it go, Emma. Take your millions and live your life. Don't throw it all away for some misguided sense of justice. What about James Harrington? What about the families who lost everything? What about them? Hayes said coldly. They lost their homes 25 years ago. Nothing you do now changes that. Nothing I do changes that. The past is dead. Let it stay buried. The line went dead. I stood there holding the phone, my mind spinning. Hayes was right about one thing. I had no good options. Stop the payment, lose everything, expose Grandpa's crimes. Let it go through, keep the money, let a blackmailer win. My phone buzzed with a text from James Harrington. Still meeting at the bank tomorrow? My sister wants to come. She deserves to hear the truth. His sister, the one who went into foster care, the one whose childhood was stolen. I thought about Grandpa's letter, about him asking me to make the right choice. But what was the right choice when every option hurt someone? I looked at the bank statement still lying on the floor, then at the wooden box with 2 keys. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., I'd walk into that bank, and whatever happened next would determine not just my future, but whether justice was worth more than $12 million. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the hotel bed staring at the two keys, turning them over in my hands like they held answers instead of just more questions. At 6 a.m., I gave up pretending I'd rest. I showered, dressed in jeans and a sweater, and packed the wooden box into my bag. By 7:30, I was in the hotel lobby, nursing a coffee that tasted like cardboard and anxiety. My phone buzzed. James Harrington, outside the bank. My sister Rachel is with me. We're ready. I texted back, be there in 20 minutes. Another text came through. This one from Victoria. Emma, please. I know you think I'm the enemy, but I'm not. Meet me before you go to the bank. I have proof of who's really behind this. Proof. Everyone claimed to have proof. I ignored her message. At 8:45, I parked 3 blocks from First National Bank and walked the rest of the way. The morning was cold, the sky gray and threatening rain. James Harrington stood outside the bank entrance with a young woman who looked about 19. She had his same dark eyes, but hers were haunted in a way that made my chest ache. Emma Peterson, I said, extending my hand. Rachel Harrington, she said quietly. Her handshake was limp, uncertain. James told me what you're doing. Thank you. I wasn't sure what I was doing deserved thanks yet. Is the lawyer meeting us? James asked, scanning the street. No, I said. Change of plans. It's just us. His eyes narrowed. Why? I couldn't tell him the truth, that the lawyer was the blackmailer. Not yet. Not until I knew what was in those accounts. Trust me, I said. James studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. We walked into the bank together. The lobby was mostly empty. A few early customers, 2 tellers, a security guard by the door. Everything looked normal. Safe. I approached the desk and asked for access to safety deposit box 847. The bank employee, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, checked my identification and the key. I'll need to verify you're an authorized user. One moment, please. She disappeared into a back office. James and Rachel sat on a bench near the window. Rachel's leg bounced nervously. James kept his hand on her shoulder, protective. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stepped away from the desk and answered. You came, Hayes' voice. I'm disappointed, Emma. I thought you were smarter than this. How did you— I have people watching the bank. Did you really think I'd leave this to chance? My stomach dropped. I glanced around the lobby. Which person was watching me? The businessman in the corner? The woman at the ATM? Last chance, Hayes said. Walk out of that bank right now. Let the transfer happen. Or I start making calls to every news outlet in Boston. Go ahead, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice was. Make your calls. Release your evidence. Do whatever you want. Silence on the other end. You're bluffing, Hayes said. Try me. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but something inside me had shifted. Grandpa was right. I was stronger than I knew. The bank employee returned with a smile. You're all set, Miss Peterson. Follow me, please. She led me through a secure door and down a hallway lined with safety deposit boxes. James and Rachel followed close behind. Box 847 was in the far corner. She used her key and mine together to open it. Inside was a thick manila envelope. I pulled it out with trembling hands. I'll give you privacy, the employee said, and left us alone in the small room. I opened the envelope. Inside were documents. Dozens of them. Bank statements, wire transfers, recorded phone conversations transcribed to paper, and photographs. My breath caught when I saw who was in those photographs. Not Hayes, not Victoria, not Uncle Richard or Aunt Margaret, Charlotte, Victoria's sister. The quiet one. The one who'd barely spoken at the will reading. In the photos, she was meeting with Hayes at a restaurant. Getting into his car. Standing outside Grandpa's house with papers in her hand. I don't understand, Rachel said, looking over my shoulder. Who is that? My cousin, I whispered. There was a note in Grandpa's handwriting clipped to the photos. Emma, Charlotte approached Hayes 6 months ago with evidence she'd found in my files. Together they devised the blackmail scheme. Hayes provided legal cover. Charlotte provided family access and information. They were planning to split the $5 million 50-50. I'm sorry you had to discover family betrayal this way, but now you know who your real enemies are. Grandpa, Charlotte, and Hayes, working together. Which meant Victoria wasn't lying. She really did have information I needed. James was reading through the bank statements. His face had gone pale. These transfers, they're not going to victim families. They're going to offshore accounts, luxury purchases, a condo in Miami. They used us, Rachel said, her voice breaking. They used our mother's death to steal money. I pulled out my phone and called Victoria. She answered immediately. Emma, thank God. Where are you? The bank. I found the evidence. It's Charlotte, isn't it? She's working with Hayes. Yes, Victoria said, and she sounded like she'd been crying. I found out yesterday. I confronted her last night and she admitted everything. She said you'd never figure it out, that you were too naive. She's planning to disappear as soon as the transfer goes through. Where is she now? I don't know. She left the house this morning and won't answer my calls. Emma, I'm so sorry. I should have known. The way she was asking questions about Grandpa, about his files, I thought she was just curious. I didn't realize she was gathering information to blackmail him. My mind was racing. The transfer happens at noon today, right? Yes, in less than 3 hours. I looked at James and Rachel, at the evidence in my hands, at the choice I still had to make. Victoria, I need you to do something for me, I said. Anything. Call the police. Tell them everything. Show them proof of the blackmail. I'm canceling the transfer. But the evidence, Grandpa's crimes, will come out, I finished. And I'll deal with the consequences. But I'm not letting Charlotte and Hayes profit from other people's suffering. Not anymore. I hung up and turned to the bank employee who'd returned to check on us. I need to speak to the account manager immediately. I need to cancel an automatic transfer. 20 minutes later, I sat in a private office while the account manager pulled up the offshore account information. The transfer is scheduled for noon, he confirmed. But I can cancel it with your authorization. However, Miss Peterson, I should warn you. Canceling this transfer may have legal ramifications. There may be contracts or agreements tied to this payment. Cancel it, I said firmly. He typed on his computer. Done? The transfer has been canceled. My phone exploded with calls. Hayes. Unknown numbers. Victoria again. I ignored them all except one. Detective Chen. Miss Peterson, I just received a very interesting call from your cousin Victoria. She's alleging blackmail, fraud, and conspiracy. Are you somewhere safe? I'm at First National Bank with witnesses. Stay there. I'm sending officers now. And Emma? We picked up Charlotte Peterson 20 minutes ago trying to board a flight to Grand Cayman. She's in custody. Relief flooded through me so intensely I almost collapsed. What about Hayes? We're looking for him now. James touched my shoulder. What happens now? I looked at him and Rachel, at their hopeful, broken faces. Now, I said slowly, we figure out how to make this right. The inheritance is still mine, but you and the other families deserve compensation for what my grandfather did. Real compensation, not blackmail money. You'd do that? Rachel whispered. It's what my grandfather should have done 25 years ago, I said. Better late than never. My phone rang one more time. Hayes. I answered. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, he hissed. No, I said calmly. I just made the first right choice in this entire mess. The police are looking for you, Hayes. Turn yourself in before this gets worse. Worse? I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to release everything. Go ahead, I interrupted. Release it all. Let the world know what my grandfather did. Let them know what you tried to do. And then let's see who ends up destroyed. I hung up. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I could breathe. 3 months later, I stood in the community center in South Boston, looking at faces I'd come to know by name. James Harrington, Rachel, Mrs. Chen, who'd lost her restaurant, Mr. Davis, who'd been a bus driver before the evictions made him homeless. 37 people total, all that remained of the original 43 families from the Harrington Development Project. They sat in folding chairs looking at me with a mixture of hope and suspicion. I'd called this meeting, me, the granddaughter of the man who'd destroyed their lives. Thank you for coming, I said, my voice echoing in the quiet room. I know many of you didn't want to be here. I know my grandfather's name brings up painful memories. But I asked you here because you deserve to know the truth, and you deserve justice. Mrs. Chen crossed her arms. Justice? Your grandfather is dead. Nothing brings back what we lost. You're right, I said. Nothing I do can undo the past. But I can try to make the present better. I pulled out a folder of documents and held it up. 3 months ago, I inherited my grandfather's estate. $12 million? A house, properties, investments. I paused. Money built on the suffering of people in this room. Mr. Davis leaned forward. What are you saying? I'm saying that after legal fees, taxes, and settling some family disputes, I have approximately $9 million left. And I'm giving $4 million of it to the families affected by the Harrington Development Project. The room erupted. You're lying, someone shouted. Rich people don't just give away money. She's trying to ease her guilt, another voice said. Please, I raised my hands. Let me explain. The money will be distributed equally among the 37 families present today. That's approximately $108,000 per family. Silence fell like snow. Rachel started crying. James put his arm around her. Additionally, I continued, I'm establishing a foundation in my grandfather's name. Not to honor him, but to acknowledge his crimes and work to repair them. The foundation will provide affordable housing assistance, legal aid for tenants facing eviction, and support services for homeless families. I'm funding it with another $2 million. Mrs. Chen stood up slowly. She walked toward me and I braced myself for anger. Instead, she took my hands in hers. You didn't have to do this, she said, tears streaming down her weathered face. You could have kept it all. No, I said softly. I couldn't. Not, and still look at myself in the mirror. Keeping that money would have made me complicit in my grandfather's crimes, and I refused to let his choices define who I became. Over the next hour, I met with each family individually. Explained the payment process, answered questions, listened to stories about what they'd lost and how they'd survived. Some hugged me. Some couldn't look at me. All of them left with checks and something they hadn't had in 25 years. Acknowledgement that what happened to them was wrong. When the room finally emptied, only James remained. What about you? He asked. What are you going to do with what's left? I smiled. Pay off my $20,000 in debt, buy a reliable car, rent a small apartment, and go back to school to finish my journalism degree. That's it? You're not keeping millions for yourself? I'm keeping enough, I said. $3 million is more than enough for me to live comfortably and pursue my dreams. The rest is going where it should have gone 25 years ago. James shook his head in disbelief. You're either the most naive person I've ever met, or the most decent. Maybe both, I admitted. He pulled me into a hug. Your grandfather didn't deserve you, but I'm glad you existed to make this right. After he left, I sat alone in the empty community center, thinking about everything that had happened. Charlotte and Hayes had both been arrested. Charlotte was facing fraud, blackmail, and conspiracy charges. She'd been denied bail. Hayes was fighting extradition from Mexico, where he'd fled after I canceled the transfer. Victoria had reached out several times, apologizing for her sister's actions. We'd had coffee once. It was awkward, but it was a start. Uncle Richard had quietly paid off the mortgage on the lake house and stayed out of everything. Aunt Margaret had used her inheritance to pay her husband's gambling debts and filed for divorce. Max had tried to sue me for defamation, but with his arrest record for identity theft now public, his lawyer dropped the case. Last I heard, he was back overseas dodging warrants. The estate scandal had made national news for a week. Some outlets painted me as a hero. Others called me naive for giving away millions. A few suggested I was just trying to buy good PR. I didn't care what they called me. I cared that Rachel Harrington could afford to finish college now. That Mrs. Chen was opening a new restaurant. That Mr. Davis had an apartment with heat. My phone buzzed with a text from Detective Chen. Thought you'd want to know. We found evidence Hayes had been planning to blackmail other wealthy families after your grandfather. You stopped a serial extortionist. I smiled and typed back, glad I could help. Another text came through. This one from an unknown number. My finger hovered over delete. But curiosity won. Miss Peterson, this is Sarah Williams from the Boston Globe. I'm writing a feature about young heirs who choose philanthropy over luxury. Would you be interested in an interview? An interview. A chance to tell the story properly. To talk about justice and responsibility and the weight of inherited wealth. I thought about Grandpa, about the video he'd left me, about his final words. You're stronger than you know. He'd been right. I'd walked into that will reading 3 months ago as a broke 24-year-old with nothing but debt and grief. I was walking away with enough money to build a future, enough courage to face my past, and enough conviction to know that sometimes the hardest choice is the right one. I texted Sarah Williams back, "Yes, let's talk." Then I picked up the wooden box, empty now except for Grandpa's letters, and walked out into the Boston sunlight. The inheritance had tested me in ways I never imagined. But I'd passed a test Grandpa never took. I'd chosen people over profit, healing over hiding, truth over comfort. And as I stood on that street corner, watching families walk by, kids laughing, life continuing in all its messy beauty, I realized that the real inheritance wasn't the money. It was the chance to be better than the people who came before me. To break cycles instead of continuing them. To choose love over fear, justice over convenience, and integrity over easy millions. Grandpa had given me $12 million. But the choice of what to do with it? That gift was worth so much more. I pulled out my phone one last time and opened the voice memo app. "Dear Grandpa," I said softly, "I hope wherever you are, you understand why I did what I did. I hope you're proud. And I hope you finally found the peace you never gave yourself permission to find in life." I paused, looking up at the clouds moving across the sky. "I forgive you for your mistakes, and I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure they never define our family again." I stopped the recording, and then I walked forward into whatever came next, because the story wasn't over. It was just beginning.